The sex assault trial of disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard continues today in Toronto. Stephanie Skandaris is once again outside the courthouse for us. Stephanie, what's happening today with the case?
Well, Heather, today is expected to start where yesterday it left off, and that is with the testimony of a police architect who is going over floor plans at Nygard headquarters here in Toronto, specifically a private bedroom, which is where the Crown alleges these assaults took place. That is what was laid out in opening arguments yesterday. The Crown attorney outlining what seems to be what they describe as a pattern in the ways in which these women were allegedly assaulted. They were aged between 16 and 28. They say this happened between 1988 and 2005. And the Crown says that it all followed a similar pattern, that it all started with a tour of Nygard headquarters in Toronto that ended in this private bedroom, a room that they describe as having no locks that were able to be seen by these women. They say that the locks were controlled by Peter Nygard, that there were no handles on the door, and they say that's where these assaults happened. Now, Peter Nygard has pleaded not guilty to these 5 counts of sexual assault and 1 of forcible confinement that he's facing here in Toronto. More evidence will be heard today. This is happening before a 12-person jury of 6 men and 6 women, and this trial just on day 2, but it's expected to last 7 weeks, Heather.
Early days in that 7 weeks of the trial expected. Steph, what are some of the other, not really highlights, but some of the main moments and things that we should be anticipating as the trial continues?
Well, the biggest would be that we are expected to hear from the women themselves. They're expected to testify, though we're not sure exactly when that will be. Now, CBC has spoken with a therapist who has worked with some of these women, as well as with members of Nygard's own family. She describes, what she says is that the jury will hear what she calls grave accounts of a high degree of violence. So she says that's what the jury can expect to hear. And she also described what it will be like for these women as they are testifying. Have a listen to that.
I certainly am reasonably optimistic that we have left behind some of the typical questions that are asked of victims. Horrible things like, what were you wearing? Why did you go? Things like that that would, indicate anything at all that was their fault. But still, the reality is you're going to be scrutinized. And there's that feeling for any victim, anyone who has to take the stand, even for me as a professional, you have to be perfect.
So that is some of what will happen later on in this trial. This trial in Ontario, of course, just the beginning of the road for legal proceedings for Peter Nygard. After this, next year, he will face trials in Manitoba and in Quebec, facing sex-related charges there. And then it's expected he'll be extradited to New York to face sex-related charges in the U.S. as well, Heather.
Stephanie Skandaris, thank you. I'll let you get into that courtroom and bring us further reporting from Toronto. Thank you, Steph.